Hello, Seattle Academy. All right, I am so pleased to bring to you our new unit on Greek history, which I am entitling From Palace to Polis. And that'll make a little more sense as we progress through this. Let's get rolling. Oh, and by the way, this is my first presentation made with Canva. I make a lot of things with Canva. I've never actually made a presentation. I started out trying to be a little bit classy with this. This is not part of the classy element. But, I got a little carried away. I put helmets on these guys and, yeah, all that. Anyway, just trying out a new tool. Here we go. Okay, some key terms. Bronze Age, Crete, Minoans, Knossos, Fresco, Mycenaeans, Mycenae, Linear A, Linear B, and oops, that should be down there, Kleos. All right, let's get rolling. There'll be some other terms that might be nuanced, maybe less important, but here we go. Okay, let's start out with a scaled timeline. So, in other words, the blocks of color really do represent a proper comparison with one another. So the Bronze Age takes up 70% of what we're calling this time period from Palace to Polis, from 3000 BC circa to 322 BCE. Pretty precise date. That represents the death of Alexander. Many Greek scholars will not really incorporate that as part of the classical period. I've decided to do so based on the discretion of the foremost Greek scholar, Paul Cartledge, who decided to do that. So I'm adopting his timeline here. Okay. So you have the Bronze Age, which makes up 70%, a large component. And as you can see, the velocity of time just increases with the periodization. You have the Iron Age next, the Archaic period, and then the Classical period. Most of what you know about Greece, no doubt, comes from this period right here. Okay, you have such things as the Parthenon. You have Socrates. Some of you might be military buffs, so you know Pericles and the Civil War, also known as the Peloponnesian War, at least from the Athenian point of view. The Spartans would have called that the Athenian War. Maybe comedy from this period. Much of tragedy came from this period. Tragedy also kind of came from the late Archaic as well. So most of what we associate with the Greeks and understand about the Greeks really comes from this tiny period, but really look at how much more there is to explore here. So as we think about the Greeks, I really urge you to consider that the single story by Ngozi Adichie, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, that we watched earlier in the year. It's so important because based on time, based on place, based on, other mitigating factors, male, female, soldier, foreigner, slave, child. There are so many mitigating factors that really create different livelihoods and experiences in the Greek world. So really bear in mind that single story. All right. I know that you guys are reading Antigone in English, so just as a point of reference here, Antigone was written around 440 BC, so in this time period. Your author, Sophocles, attempts to recreate a time period that's 1,000 years earlier, all right? That's sort of, he's not talking about what modern Greece looks like and using characters from that. He's using characters from this epic period in the past. Okay. Today we're really programmed with this sort of progressivist mindset of, the future looks better than the past. The Greeks did not hold that in their imagination. The Greeks had this wonderful, amazing palatial period in their past that was destroyed, and subsequent eras that were, I guess, less advanced or less sophisticated as far as, technology and economy and all that thing, would look upon these ruins and really identify that the past was greater than the present. And it really changes the mindset. It changes the arts. So in this case, as you sort of cast heroes and want to talk about these quote unquote epic tales, you really go back to this period of the Bronze Age. And in particular, I would say the late Bronze Age. It's also called the Age of Heroes. Odysseus, okay, Agamemnon, Achilles, Hector for you Trojan fans. All right. So the difference in time is really unimaginable. We're talking about 1,000 years. That would be us writing stories about what happened in 1021. Long time ago. All right. Let's go to our map. So we are going to be focused on the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. All right. And really, these are the Minoans. It's hard to find a perfect map, but this will eventually become part of the Mycenaean civilization. The myth that we watched in class, Theseus and the Minotaur, actually, I would suggest, recalls this historical event of the Mycenaeans overpowering the Minoans, though in mythic language, in which case the Minotaur really stands for much more than a bull, right? So these are the Minoans. Their foremost citadel or palace was in Knossos, and we're going to look a little at that archaeology. The other people we're going to look at are the Mycenaeans, and these are the Mycenaeans. All right, not so much, well, sort of here as well, but these are the Mycenaeans. You will see that there is one palace actually called Mycenae, and that's sort of the foremost, the largest, the most influential. So this civilization is really named after the foremost citadel, which is Mycenae, led by Agamemnon, right? Who led the fleet of ships up till Troy. Here you go, and you have the Trojan War. This is the era we're talking about. Okay, just some other things to note. Here's Egypt, obviously really big players. These are the Hittites, okay? Really, Hittites used to be a joke in ancient history. The only Hittites we really knew, there were two Hittites. One, I think, might have sold a tomb in the New Testament. Another one was in the Hebrew Bible, Uriah the Hittite. I wonder if any of you know your Hebrew Bible here, but it was a very close associate to King David. He was a faithful soldier to King David as well. King David was in love with his wife, Bathsheba. So Uriah the Hittite volunteered to go on the front lines during battle, was ultimately killed. And that blood was on David's hands, I tell you. He purposefully did that in order to orchestrate and arrange his union with Bathsheba. All right. So as you can imagine, Hittites were not regarded as very smart because of that one Uriah the Hittite. You're like, come on, Uriah. Your loyalty got in the way here. But in the 20th century, or excuse me, the late 19th century archaeology demonstrated really the magnificence of this empire, this Hittite empire. Hittites will actually eventually be the generators of iron, which will ultimately put an end to this Bronze Age. And they will not survive it into the Iron Age, by the way, as a stroke of irony. Some other things, some of you guys did Ur, right? This is no longer the Sumerians. We're talking about Babylonians at this point. The Elamites over here. Okay. Okay. Let's keep moving. Okay. Let's take us to the Palace of Knossos, and here we have both the aerial view of the excavation of the palace, as well as an archaeologist's depiction of that aerial view, and what the layout looked like. And as you look at this, looks kind of like a maze or a labyrinth, doesn't it? Interesting connection to the story. Another way by which myth retains elements of the past really actually quite accurately. Okay. Here is another reconstruction. Again, if you love science, if you love art, archaeology is where it is at, people. Science, it's both a scientific and creative activity. Here we are again with archaeology and history. You have certain data and you need to consider that data. And at the same time, what might it have looked like? And you can't be completely off board and do whatever you want, but based on the archaeological evidence that we have, what might that have looked like? And I am digging this Palace of Knossos. Really quite remarkable. All right, let's dig in and look at some other parts of this palace. Oops. There we go. All right. Bullshit everywhere. All right. These horns are everywhere. If we go back, I gotta go back too. It's hard to really tell, but the linings here above these pillars are all these horns. These horns were found everywhere. The associations of Knossos with the bull is everywhere. Here we have a peculiar item, and I wonder if any of you really can figure out what that is. I mean, it just looks like a decoration you hang on a wall, like an animal head or something. But it actually has a function. It is a Rhyton. This is the ultimate party glass. All right. Well, why is that? Why would you create a cup that you can't sit down without it like spilling over, right? It makes no sense. Or does it make a lot of sense? All right. The Rhyton would be filled with wine, and it would be passed among individuals throughout the event. Okay? Truly, if the Rhyton falls, the party is over anyway. Okay? So, purposefully designed so that it cannot sit down properly. All right? Keep the Rhyton vertical. I've been begging SAS students to make a Rhyton in ceramics ever since I've been here. This is my 8th year. No one has taken me up on that. This Rhyton is got to be, to me, the most beautiful piece of ancient archaeology. Not just ancient Greek archaeology, but just ancient archaeology in general. I so desire this piece. It's so beautiful. All right, moving on. Here we have a Minoan fresco. And these frescoes are paintings that would line the interior walls of the palace. And here we have bull jumping. Okay, so we watched that corny cartoon, and certainly you said to yourself, well, that was a deviation from the historical record. And if you said that or thought that, you would be wrong, because there's actually copious evidence to suggest the Minoans did bull jumping, as if this fresco wouldn't be enough. But here we have the bull and the individual grabbing the horns of the bull, and we have subsequent acrobatics. All right, bull jumping. More frescoes. Oh, a dolphin. And, I didn't think about this, but another reference to our cartoon. Okay, here we have dolphins. The Minoans, I feel like they had some anxiety about vacant space in art. It's just like, okay, a fish needs to go here and here and here. They weren't just content with this vacant space. I don't know. Is that what artists call that blank space? Anywho, another just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fresco. And the Minoans were recognized for the variability of their motifs that they really employ in art. You see a lot of animals. You see like naturescapes without the animals as well. You see people engaging in arts and leisure. The theme of war is absolutely missing. It's really peculiar. It's caused some individuals to say that this was not a warlike society. I am not subscribing to that at all. These were really, Minoans at this time were really the number one, what you might call the hegemon. I should have made that a vocab word, of the Aegean seas. The Mycenaeans were probably not committing individuals as tribute to the Minoans, certainly paying some sort of tax for the usage of the Aegean, however. And you don't get to that position without some sort of force. But interestingly, missing from the historical record, I think of those of you who did the Indus Valley, I am not subscribing that they were not a warlike people or did not battle. And nevertheless, it is vacant from the historical record, and mysteriously vacant. It's just interesting. All right. Here we go. More stuff with the Minoans. I added this because this is, as far as I know, the only octopus that's actually on a flat surface. Ancient Aegean art put octopuses all over vases. Every other vase has an octopus on it. Interestingly, this one's the only one I know that's on a flat surface, so I've included it. Here we have a monkey. Some beautiful sort of floral pieces and design. Of course, I'm going to give you some birds. I forget what bird this is, but I actually investigated it once upon a time. Just beautiful, accurate detail. All right. Swallows, clearly swallows. Look at their sort of angled wings. For those of you who read Omelas. Again, swallows are birds of spring, not summer. I really contest that. Anywho, this one's actually from Thera, which is an important island that we're going to discuss shortly off of the island of Crete. Crete is the island, the Minoan island where Knossos is on. Forgot to note that. Today, currently a part of the nation of Greece. Okay. More stuff with respect to the Minoans. Here we have, again, a hierarchical society. Again, you don't develop this in a kindly way. Interestingly, all across the Aegean, again, we're talking about not just Minoans, but Mycenaeans, subsequently the Greeks, as well as Etruscans, who are sort of an early civilization that runs before Rome. A lot of people depicted naked. Well, I would say two different kinds of people that really operate on completely different ends of the social universe. It's very interesting. You have these people who are some sort of dependent population or slave population. And then you also have heroes, gods, goddesses depicted as nude. It's just always been so interesting to me that both populations who operate completely different ends of a social universe are both depicted, characterized in the same way. I haven't read any research on that. I wish I did, because to me it just seems, it's interesting. It's another question. All right. Oh, I forgot. This fresco thing was a little bit of a rabbit trail, and now we are back to the bull jumping. In case any of you want sort of a course on how to do it, 1, grab the bull by the horns. This is not a euphemism. Okay? Allow the bull to project you backwards. Land on his lower back and then jump off. You think this is a student studying it, but no, this is actually an individual who received a lot of funding to make this graph for you. You could be that person. All right? You could be that person. What a great, awesome life. Studying ancient bull jumping. People do it. I'm telling you. All right. Okay, the Phaistos disc. We have not talked about this feature of the Minoans yet, but there was a written language. And I would have told you a little while ago that this is completely undecipherable. It turns out that in the last couple of years, there have been some individuals that suggest that they can decode the Phaistos disc. I've done a little research there, not a whole lot. I will actually encourage one of you, several of you, to sort of pursue this question if you have extra time. We'll create time in class for this next week. But Phaistos disc, what does it say? What do people think it says? And this language is actually called Linear A. All right. Now, the Bronze Age, the Mycenaeans. Let's just make a quick little shift. We're going to leave the Minoans where they are, talk about them a little bit later on. And now I would like to talk about the Mycenaeans. Again, these collections of palaces or citadels that are all quite different, generally antagonistic toward each other. They can muster some form of collaboration when there's an outside enemy, such as Troy, but in general, doing a whole lot of fighting, not just among one another cities, but within the cities as well. Here we have Mycenae, which is, again, that flagship. Athens. You will see that Sparta is missing here. Sparta does have a Bronze Age settlement, but it's pretty humble as in comparison with these other ones. Pylos. Oops. I think one of these islands is believed to be Ithaca. I read something recently that's of an individual who attempted to find where Ithaca was. And of course, Ithaca is where Odysseus is from, or Ulysses. No islands here, but worthy of note, Lesbos, the home of the early female Greek poet, Sappho, who wrote about woman love. Hopefully we get to that as well. All right, I'll stop it there, but here are our things. Oh, hit the button. Don't hit the button. Hit the button.
Meet your next pillow. Why do we make our pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
This is my man. Achilles! Agrius has this effect on many heroes.
Careful who you insult, old king.
King, Achilles is not with the army.
Where is he?
I sent a boy to look for him.
Perhaps you should have our war tomorrow when you're better rested. I should have you whipped for your impudence. Perhaps you should fight him.
Achilles. Achilles. Look at the men's faces. You can save hundreds of them. You can end this war with a swing of your sword. Think how many songs they'll sing in your honor. And then go home to their wives.
Imagine a king who fights his own battles. Wouldn't that be a sight? Of all the warlords loved by the gods, I hate him the most.
We need him, my king.
For now. Is there no one else? Is there no one else? Who are you, soldier? Achilles, son of Peleus. Achilles? I'll remember the name.
The ruler of Thessaly carries this scepter. Give it to your king.
He's not my king.
Okay. And quick note, Thessaly is not identified on this map. It is a Greek territory as well. It's up here. That's Thessaly. Okay, so there we have it. It's sort of a characterization of the early Greek period. I think it captures it well. It's that time of heroes. And I think a really quite ethical, if I say that, way to solve problems is not for huge armies, entire armies en masse to fight one another, but for you to select your strongest fighter, have them fight. It really saves a whole lot of carnage. If only we could adopt some sort of modernized form of that today. So it's an age of heroes, the individual. And this idea of imagine the stories or the songs that will be told about you. That's what every individual wants. That's what's called kleos. renown, fame, this idea that future generations will talk about you and really sing about you. That's what everyone wants. Kleos, and it's part of a lot of names, like Sophocles is made up of Sophos, wisdom or wise, Kleos, so wise renown, okay? Pericles, you have Aristocles, you have a lot of Cleeses, Megacles, Big Kleos. That's a pretty cool name. All right, I'm going to move. Let's talk about the Mycenaeans. Here we have the citadel, the aerial archaeological view of the citadel of Mycenae. All right. And you say that this reconstruction is not as cool as Knossos. And I might agree with you. At the same time, this is also a citadel. It's on a hill. It's a palace on a hill. It's fortified with massive stones and really hard to access as well. So, there we have it. It's hard for this not to stand out, right? All these structures are square. There's one round one. And rather than sort of let you know what that is, I'm just going to have you think about, what do you think that is? And I'm going to move on. We'll talk about it next time. The Bronze Age. Cyclopean stones. Look at the size of this stone. I really don't want to think that this guy is wearing a Stars and Stripes button down, but I think he might be, especially since it's coupled with a cowboy hat. And no, that is not me. Other students have asked. The stones were Cyclopean. I want you to imagine once again that you are not a resident of this time period. You're perhaps from the Iron Age or the next age, the Archaic period, and you're looking at these structures and you're figuring out, how in the world did they do this? And, you know, it's kind of like the whole modern aliens built the pyramids thing. Later Greeks, some suggested that these walls must have been built by the Cyclops. Of course, Cyclops are made famous in the Odyssey. These are the absurdly strong but really dumb monsters who Odysseus ultimately blinds and rides a bunch of sheep to get out of the cave. Not after the Cyclops eats a bunch of his men, though. All right, there we have it. The honing of the stonework, not bad. I mean, it's not like Inca level, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right. And again, look at those massive stones. Just imagine the inspiration that would give artists and people. Like, what happened? We got to talk about this. Create stories. Oh, it's cool. All right. Moving on to some Mycenaean artwork. We looked at Minoan artwork. Mycenaean, unlike the Minoans, were less interested in the sort of everyday life, maybe sport or animals, flora. What we get is really and maybe predictably, you get heroes as a motif. This is interesting because it's not just one soldier that stands out. It's actually a collective of soldiers, which is, I think, interesting in that respect. Most of Mycenaean art motif centered around military, which is most of it, focuses around more elite status folks, like these folks in their polka dots and their chariot. Pretty cool stuff. So here we have Mycenaean art. Again, predictably, we're getting heroes, military motif. Here we have Linear B, and this is the same script that you saw in the Physis disc, Linear A. Mycenaeans and Minoans had completely different languages. It is even believed that they come from different families of language. Like they weren't even close. Nevertheless, ultimately what we're going to see is that the Mycenaeans adopt this script and use it for their language. And the script, they have used it as syllabic. So some of you perhaps speak syllabic languages. I know, for instance, Japanese is syllabic, right? You have like kakikukiko, right? These are all syllable sounds. And in here you have the daja ka mana, all right? These images represent syllabic sounds. Okay. Well, what did some of these sources say? You know, you don't get a whole lot of really great narrative. It's not like the comedy or the tragedy that you're going to get over 1,000 years later in Greek history. You get a lot of stuff that says like 30 measures of wheat. All right. So much seed. 30 wheat, so many. All right. 3 men, vacant priest's land, seed of so much, 6 measures of wheat. All right. And you're saying, I didn't get anything out of that. Well, you actually did. Wheat is important, all right? And it's actually a foundation of the economy. So you're getting some really good stuff. And by the way, the wanox is like a term for a king, and the temenos is like a land holding, all right? So the wanox is temenos. And you're also seeing that actually as a part of the king's holdings, there are parts allocated to priests. So, you know, you're getting some stuff. And, you know, on its own, you're saying this maybe doesn't give us a whole lot, but when you have just thousands of these little tablet pieces, it really helps you put together these little puzzle pieces, really. It's kind of cliche, but it's really what it is, to, you know, sort of interpret and figure out what the Mycenaeans civilization really looked like. Here's another one. Oops. Slaves, women, 32, older girls, 5, younger girls, 15, younger boys, 4. So they're taking count of different sorts of people. We're learning that there are indeed, if we hadn't figured it out already, there are slaves. Interesting, why are older girls, and younger boys associated here? Well, who's missing? Older boys, right? And so not just based on what's there, but what's missing, we get just this rich information. So clearly it seems from this that older boys have some sort of privileged position, and we are putting together slaves and women. And it's interesting that that's a collective number, and the other ones are parsed out more specifically. Just so rich in information, that one little piece of a tablet, actually. All right. And again, I know you guys are reading Sophocles, so I thought I'd give you just a little quick image of the Bronze Age ruins at Cadmea, or the Citadel at Thebes. I know, and not really as cool as the other places, but Thebes is just enormously important. Everyone in the ancient world hates Thebes, except Thebans. And why is that? That's another question I kind of offer to you. Why do people hate on Thebes so much? I mean, the Greeks in general didn't really get along with one another. That said, among the things that Greeks agreed on is Thebans are evil, okay? So why is that? All right, that's a little detour. Let's go back. Talk about this map again. We're going to have a collapse. Bronze Age collapse. Everyone is donezo, except for Egypt will survive, and Assyria, who's probably the smaller participants in this, they will also survive. And they're also going to be the individuals that really capitalize when this sort of power vacuum is created, all right? And all these places drop. The Assyrians are going to be the one that really capitalize on this, all right? Let's just say a little bit about the collapse. And we need to start on this island, Thera. I showed you the swallow the swallow fresco. Here we have Thera. Thera is a part of this arc of fire that they call it. All right. We have the ring of fire. This has the arc of fire. These are all volcanic. I say mountains, not really mountains either, but volcanoes here. And what these are is actually what's called a marine volcano. So it means that these sort of magma chambers are really close to sea level. So in the 16th century, there was a massive earthquake. Scientists today think it was around 7. So, it's within the realm of what we see today. It's not like, one of these 9-pointers. Nevertheless, I think especially because it's a marine volcano, it caused large tsunamis as well. So Crete and Knossos, the Minoan Empire, was severely weakened as a result of this. There are some scholars that even suggest that the pumice and ash are even recorded even as far as records in China. So it was a massive earthquake causing tsunamis and really impacted Crete. The second thing, what else is happening after this time as well? Crete is weakened. The Mycenaeans will ultimately come and take over Crete. That's when they sort of adopt their language. Again, the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. It's sort of wrapped in mythical imagery, and nevertheless tells a historical tale of the Mycenaeans defeating the Minoans. What else is happening? Shortly thereafter, you have the Sea Peoples. Here they are. All right. I can't look at this. I feel like he's holding up a basketball hoop. That's what it looks like to me. It's of course not. I think it's a fan of sorts that generally accompanies Ramses here, our pharaoh, clearly depicted. Egyptian iconography likes to scale individuals like this as to who's most important and who's least important. So here are the boat people, the sea people. Here is how they are also depicted with this sort of a hat and Egyptian images. All right, handcuffs. Didn't use handcuffs. They bound you by the elbows, but no, you can't put your elbows in front of your body. You must put your elbows behind your head, and then they are bound together. I can't do that. That just sounds terrible. But here are some sea peoples being detained. And that's really the sort of collapse of that Bronze Age. Again, as I mentioned, the Egyptians will survive. Mycenaeans will not survive. I mean, there will be some citadels that continue to be occupied. Athens will be one of them. But in general, the civilization that they knew was no longer. That sort of huge Mediterranean economy was destroyed. And it went from this system of high-density palace living scenarios to sort of regionalism where people kind of dispersed and lived in smaller settlements. Again, enamored by these massive stones and wondering, as time went by, what those stones were. And as you can imagine, many stories would be told. There was a loss of writing for the Mycenaeans. And that won't be recovered until the end of the Iron Age, the beginning of the Archaic period. That's what really signals the emergence of the Archaic period, which is writing. All right, enough of that. So some questions to consider. Is the Phaistos disc really decipherable? What do scholars think it says? Why is Thebes hated by other Greeks? And finally, is there something in this presentation that inspired a different sort of question? All right, so this screencast is long enough. I'm not requiring you to deliver anything or submit anything. That said, I'm going to keep submissions open on Schoology, and I encourage you to consider one of these questions if you did want to pursue it. Okay, I am going to offer some time in class next week for us to talk about what you came up with. So again, this is a challenge by choice activity, not required. And at the same time, I encourage you to think about one of these two questions or create your own question. Hopefully, somewhere along the line, some question came up that you had. And this is an opportunity to kind of pursue that. All right, team. I am signing off. I hope this was informative. All right.